This is the GardenDC podcast, the podcast about everything gardening in the Washington, D.C. and Mid-Atlantic region. I'm your host, Kathy Jentz. I'm the editor of Washington Gardener magazine, and we're aimed at gardening enthusiasts, people who grow everything from edibles to ornamentals, natives to exotics. If it grows in our area, that's what we talk about. Welcome to episode 194 of the GardenDC podcast. In this episode, we talk with Fran Carden about Historic Garden Week and local garden tours. The plant profile is on Creeping Jenny, and we share what's going on in the garden as well as some upcoming local gardening events and this week's garden tasks in the What's New segment. We close out with a last word on celebrating May Day with Christy Page of Green Prints. This episode, we're joined by Fran Carden. She is the chair of the Historic Virginia Garden Week, and we're going to talk all about local garden tours, especially those wonderful ones in Virginia. Welcome, Fran.
Thank you, Kathy. I appreciate you having me today.
Great to have you. And so, Fran, you've been super busy, like most of us this spring. So I'm glad to have this little bit of time with you, and we'll look back at some of the past tours that the Virginia Garden Week has hosted and maybe look a little ahead at some planned. But before we dive into all of that, I wanted to ask you if baby Fran was born with chlorophyll in her veins and a green thumb.
Well, I thankfully say yes, absolutely. With my life, it's probably nurture as well as nature.
Hmm.
My grandparents were on both sides were big gardeners. My Virginia grandparents had beautiful flower gardens in their yards, and my Georgia grandparents had not only beautiful flowers but huge vegetable gardens. And I would spend summers in Georgia, and we would of course pick beans and shell butter beans and okra and all the wonderful things that they grew. And I really still have a beautiful vision of their garden as well as an aunt and uncle's gardens that I thought was just a wonderland. And when you're small, looking up at all the beautiful vegetables growing over your head, it's really amazing. So I got a little bit of both from both sets of grandparents. And my cute parents had a lovely vegetable garden and beautiful flower gardens also. So while I, of course, went through those years of my life where I hated weeding, I'm back to loving weeding. So that's a good thing for me.
Hmm. Well, I'm glad it didn't spoil that for a lifetime.
Exactly.
Hmm. And then how did you get to your own garden and what do you grow in that garden?
My own garden, I live in a neighborhood in a home, with gardens around me, not huge gardens like my grandparents had. But I really started just putting in things that I loved, and I've developed my gardens, and I kind of have that attitude, which may or may not be boring to some people, kind of business in the front, party in the back attitude. So in the front, in my courtyard gardens, I love my blooming white perennials and annuals out there. I've got viburnum and Annabelle hydrangeas and iris, the reblooming immortalities. I have different anemones, hellebores, azaleas, phlox, camellias, just lots of beautiful textured plants, but all blooming in whites. So there's a really beautiful kind of cohesiveness in the front of my home. And in the back, it's crazy, Kathy. I've got all fun colors. I have, of course, my tulips have finished. I
Hmm.
grow a lot of daffodils. I'm an American Daffodil Society judge, and with that position, you have to grow over 100 types of daffodils. So I have all of the daffodils in my back. Um, I have lilies. I'm becoming a lily judge. I'm a student judge for the North American Lily Society. So that's been fun. The deer eat my lilies. So that's
Hmm.
tricky with the lilies, as you can imagine. I love my dahlias and dogwoods, as you know, in Virginia. Just a lot of different beautiful plants in the back, not only for color and interest, But I think you would call me a grower and a shower because I have to grow a lot of different plants and cultivars in order to enter shows. And that comes along with being a judge, is also entering shows with the American Daffodil Society, with the Garden Club of America flower shows, and the North American Lily Society, and the Garden Club of Virginia flower shows. They annually have a daffodil show, a lily show, and a rose show.
Mm.
So I really have a huge variety to cut from for showing and flower shows. So that's another part of what I love doing.
Hmm. And let's talk a little bit about the American Daffodil Society. So they just had their annual meeting of the whole society was based here in Virginia a few weeks ago.
Exactly, in Dallas, exactly right. And I was not able to go, sadly. Well, for a happy reason, I was going to a cousin's wedding. So
Mm.
I could not attend that, but it was huge and wonderful. So many blooms, and then when I say bloom, it's actually stems. They do a stem count. So
Hmm.
hundreds of stems. Were you able to go to that, Kathy?
Yeah, one of my interns, Cassie and I, we jetted off over to Herndon, Dulles, Virginia, and we were there just to see the competitions.
Right.
And that ballroom, first of all, freezing, which
Yes.
thank goodness I had a fleece hoodie on, and I didn't think about that, but yeah, that's what kept the flowers looking so great, and that was the final day of competition that I was there, so I can imagine coming from the people's gardens that they kept them in cold storage, and then having them in that freezing ballroom kept them looking all fabulous. So we took lots of pictures, we took
Great.
some videos, and we posted those if people want to check that out on our TikTok channel and our YouTube
Great.
shorts. It's one of actually our most popular videos. People are just stunned by the variety of daffodils at that show.
Oh, good. Well, I am jotting that down for me to do after we finish today. I will look at those videos. There's nothing like a daffodil. They really are great bulbs. They are always people pleasers. They come back year after year. The deer don't eat them.
Mhm.
They really, if you cut one and and keep it chilled, clean it up and keep it chilled and keep it hydrated, it really can last 10 days before you enter it into a show. So they really are great. They're great bulbs. So I'm
Mhm.
glad you were able to go. As I said, I'm disappointed that I was not able to go. But before that, I had attended the Garden Club of Virginia show, which was in Norfolk at Virginia Wesleyan College, or Virginia Wesleyan University,
Mhm.
and they've hosted us for 2 years, and we hope they'll host us a third year. They were so lovely to have the Garden Cover Virginia and other American Daffodil Society members there and it's a show which I believe the national show also included horticulture, flower arranging, and photography. And
Mhm.
that's really a diverse, great representation. And for many people to be able to participate in a flower show, if they're not a grower, but yet a photographer. So we've just had that. And then there are also lovely little local shows that the American Daffodil Society um, participates with. And I was in the Maryland Daffodil Society show, Upperville. So it's a great organization. And I encourage your listeners, if they love daffodils, to become a member of the American Daffodil Society and also look at their show schedule on their website.
Mhm. Yeah, and I'm a big daffodil fan just because it's like set it and forget it, right?
Right.
I have dozens of varieties and I love to have, a big selection of early, mid, and late blooming. And that this year's spring, we had a long, cool March.
Yes.
And then April came on, and then we had that warm time. And it seemed like everything opened and the tulips opened at the same time. So they kind of got blasted through on that. But I was glad to see so many daffodils still were be able to be in that competition.
I know, and those really cool nights that we have that you mentioned, that those really held the daffodils in our gardens. So it's always, it's exciting to see those first daffodils. And I know everyone, all of your listeners, you're driving down the road and you see the first daffodils and you don't
Mhm.
know what to do with yourself. You know spring is on the way. And then when those last ones, those late blooming ones, finally begin to fade, you think, oh, it's over. But it's always a fun season.
Mhm. So let's talk a little bit about your journey in garden clubs and moving up to state chair. So how did
Okay.
that start? What was the first club you joined?
So I'm a member of the local club, a local club here in Charlottesville. I live in Charlottesville. And it's Albemarle Garden Club is the name of our club, and that's the name of our county where Charlottesville is. And so, as a member of Albemarle Garden Club, you also, that club is a member of the Garden Club of Virginia. And the Garden Club of Virginia has 48 clubs statewide. And our club is also a member of the Garden Club of America, which is a national organization. And so, as a result of being a member of my local club, I also have membership in the two larger clubs. And that's how it all started. I joined in 2003. My mom was or is a former Garden Club of Virginia president. And my grandmothers, whom I mentioned earlier, were both members of their local garden club. So, garden club came very naturally to me. And I was delighted to join our local garden club, Albemarle Garden Club, at Morven in Charlottesville, which is a beautiful property that's owned by the University of Virginia now. But it's actually where our garden club was founded. One of the owners of Morven was one of our founding members of our club. Anyway, we were all dressed up for Morven for the day, and we were all dressed up as if it was the beginning of our club, and we had on beautiful party hats and gloves, and the home was open for us. And I look across and a skunk is chasing one of our members, one of our more elegant members, across the backyard. And I have to say that visual is still in my head. It really, really was. It was a funny moment, and we could not laugh. But then we thought, no one wants to go help her, right? Who's going to go help her? So that was a funny moment. Um,
And scary.
and scary. You're exactly right. We've had birds in homes. You know, you want to have your glorious doors open for the garden tour, and so we've had many times birds have entered into homes. So we've had to have the hostesses get the birds. One time we had a dog come on the shuttle with us, and I don't know how the dog snuck onto
Hmm.
the shuttle, but they were shuttling from property to property, and a dog just appeared, and it was one of the homeowner's dogs, and he literally had to finish the circuit before getting back off at his home again. So that was another funny one. And then a big problem, not a big problem, it was again funny. One of the homeowners has a lot of deer, and she has the motion sensor sprinklers set up in her garden. And so
Mm.
the first tour group that came through her garden were, yeah, doused with water because
Oh
it
no.
wouldn't turn off the motion sensor. Thankfully, it was mostly our garden club members, so no one was outraged at us. But it just the little things, Kathy. Sometimes you think, wow, we didn't even think of that. So those are some funny little historic garden week moments.
Well, I thank you for sharing, Fran. I can imagine many, many of these are happening all across other garden tours, and you never know what you're going to see on a local garden tour.
You're exactly right.
And is your club one that limits how many can be in at one time? Is there a wait list for joining that one?
So we do have bylaws with the number of membership, and that is really because we really try to have meetings in members' homes.
Hmm.
And we've found that as the club has grown, that's just more and more difficult, as
Yep.
I'm sure you understand. But there's not a waiting list. What the most important thing, um, as with all volunteer organizations, is you know what you're getting yourself into, right,
Mhm.
Kathy?
Oh, yeah.
Because I think you can want to be a member of frankly anything, but there's work in your volunteer work. So one of the most important um, goals for our membership committee is to make certain that anyone that's interested is interested for the right reasons. We really have beautiful gardeners. We have a great conservation effort. We have fundraisers where we give back to our community. Charlottesville, we have a garden that a bog, a garden with native plants in it that we really tend to and spend many hours in and spend our dollars on that. We give money back to our community for conservation and beautification efforts. So while you're a member of the garden club, there's very many hours involved with the local membership
Mhm.
responsibilities.
Mhm.
And so to become a member, you need to know someone who's a member, or one of the ways that we introduce ourselves, because we want people who want us, but we have a gardening course called the Nellie Huff course, and it's a speaker series that takes place in September and October each year. And we have speakers, and anyone in the community can sign up for it, but it gives them a glimpse, firstly, of gardening, and secondly of our club, so that they can get to know us, we can get to know those people that participate in this Nellie Huff gardening course. And it's a it is a requirement for membership. The only other requirement we really have is being a resident. You have to
Mhm.
be a resident in Albemarle County for 2 years, which is nice. It's just one of the, versus someone moving here and saying, "Oh, I want to join a garden club," and moving away 6 months later. We know that they're going to be with us for a while, and that's what we want, frankly.
Mhm. Yeah, I speak to many Federation garden clubs and Garden Club of America garden clubs, and I notice, a lot of them have unique bylaws like yours, where you have to have residency, you have to know somebody in the club or be invited in, and then others are more open
Right,
and might have a larger membership. And then there's those garden clubs who are not part of any of those larger organizations. They just popped up in a neighborhood or a community, and those would be, just come one and all.
right.
So there's different garden clubs and different ways of organizing out there.
And that's what's so nice. If you want to be in a garden club, there is one that fits you for certain. And so I think people just need to explore their communities and see what's out there.
Hmm.
If you want to be a part of it, or you can just spend all your time in your garden by yourself, and that's a good
Hmm.
thing too.
Hmm. So let's talk a little bit about your journey. So you were in the Albemarle Garden Club, and then what brought you to Historic Garden Week?
So for Historic Garden Week, the incoming president selects individuals to be the chairs of certain committees: conservation, horticulture, membership. And the current president, Debbie Lewis, who is from Martinsville, she called and asked if I would chair Historic Garden Week. And I was delighted to accept. It's a 2 year position, and my experience is that I was open in Charlottesville. My home and gardens were open in Charlottesville in 2011, and I'd also been a local tour chair for our club. I think it was probably 2005, 2006. So I had experience with Historic Garden Week as a homeowner and a tour chair. And I really love the individuals that were also invited to be chairman. So it gave me an opportunity to uh, get more experience with the Garden Club of Virginia members, as well as help with a part of it that I love, Historic
Mhm.
Garden Week in Virginia.
Well, I have to ask, since you were a garden tour host at your own garden,
Right.
how that went. I know that is a lot of work.
It was a lot of work, and my home was open. I have four daughters, and they were young then. I They were sent away for a week while I made sure everything was in place in the home, because most of our visitors want to see more gardens, but as you know, often the home is open as well. And I was more worried about my home than my garden, quite frankly. So the children and the dogs were sent to a neighbor's house. But it was so, I have to say, it was so much fun. It's so wonderful to have people walk through your home, walk through your gardens. I also served as a hostess for the day, and they just want to know what you're planning, why you planted, what's been successful, how did you make these decisions. It's just fun having discussions with other gardeners. As you
Mhm.
know, we're a very great community of gardeners, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. I was
Hmm.
happy when it was over. I cannot say that I was not, but it was great. It was great preparing. And for the 2 days, my home was open 2 days with other homes in our neighborhood. And of course, it was a glorious 2 days. It was beautiful weather wise and people wise.
Mm. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about hosting tours and what all goes into it and some of that experience for people who haven't been on these type of garden tours before. So this is different than when we talked to Carolyn Mullet in a previous episode of Carex Tours about going off and jetting off to Europe and visiting
Right,
some beautiful gardens. These are local garden tours that are usually put on by a garden club or an organization like Virginia Garden Week, or Garden Week, or they could be a church or a local group using it as a fundraiser. Sometimes it's garden only. And
right,
then sometimes with yours, most of the ones on the Historic Garden Week, it's because it's a historic house or property and people get access to the home as well. And then
right,
that brings, like you were saying, a whole new wrinkle to things because you have to have a traffic flow pattern to
right.
get people in and out. You have to have docents stationed or volunteers stationed in each room, and maybe they're explaining some of the furniture or the history of the house. But I'm going to say one of my favorite parts, Fran, is the floral arrangements. Can you
Oh,
talk about
yes.
that a little bit?
Oh gosh, they are extraordinary. And I'm so glad that you, as a horticulture and a grower, love the arrangements. I love the arrangements. I'm an envy of all of the talented arrangers. I wish I could do more as they have done. But that is a great, um, it's a wonderful time for the club members. So, as I mentioned earlier, there are 48 Garden Club of Virginia clubs. And the number of tours over the 8 day week, so it varies year to year, 28 to 30 tours. So some of the clubs do it individually, independently. A single club will do a tour. In Charlottesville, there are three Garden Club of Virginia clubs. So we coordinate the three clubs for a single tour. Richmond has four clubs that they all work together for 2 days of a tour with different properties. But the greatest thing is the days before the tours, Kathy, when all the members are cutting from their gardens. They've already previewed the homes, by the way. So they've already met with the homeowners. They've decided where the arrangements will go. A lot of times they will look at the artwork in a home or statuary or even the fabrics and really try to enhance the fabrics or interpret the art through flowers in a lot of the rooms. We have flower arrangements. Of course, we have traditional flower arrangements on mantles. We have abstract uh, flower arrangements in showers, which I'm sure you've seen, flower arrangements hanging off of chandeliers in dining room versus the traditional down the middle of the dining room table. One last year was wonderful. It was the homeowner had a peacock, just a silver huge peacock, and the designers took the peacock on the dining room table and placed it at the head of the table and did an entire flower arrangement on the table as if it were the peacock's feathers. And it truly looked like peacock's feathers coming out of this piece of artwork. It was beautiful.
Hmm.
We have outdoor fun arrangements. There are tours that will set up different vignettes. For instance, in a yard, you'll there'll be a beautiful picnic blanket with flowers and things flowing out of the picnic basket. There'll be a wedding, let's say a wedding day brunch in the dining room. So different arrangers will create obviously differently every year for the tour. And this is where the clubs really vary, and they really shine. They cut Typically most of the flowers come from their own gardens. So they will plant tulips, they will plant the daffodils, they will plant the plants that they know should be pretty for historic garden week, and then they use those in their arrangements. Some are purchased, some flowers are purchased, but mostly they are provided by club members. And this is going back, I promise you, I'm going to finish my thought.
Mhm.
They have so much fun on those days with the arranging days. They're buckets of flowers just cascading all over the house. And then they get to designing and they work together and they laugh and they have a great time with the designing. And as a homeowner, when I walked into my home after the arrangers had finished, I was aghast. I would never have imagined all the places that they decided to put the arrangements, nor the just how spectacular they were. Everyone needs to, if you're open for Garden Week, you need to plan a party a few days afterwards, just so that you can enjoy your flowers for longer. I was at a tour in Suffolk, which is my hometown, which was on the first Saturday of Historic Garden Week. And one of the homeowners was having the prom party that night. So all of her flowers were done. Generally, one of the homeowners will have a party for all of the garden club members just to really celebrate their tour and the experience and enjoy the flowers while
Mhm.
everything's picture perfect.
Yeah, and I would say picture perfect is a little bit of a tweak because you're not allowed to take indoor
No,
photos
you're
during
not.
the
You're
tours.
exactly
And
right.
I've been so frustrated, Fran, because there's been so many spectacular arrangements. I recall one, I think it was in a Great Falls, Virginia home. They
Right,
had done their entire kitchen island kind of
right.
with this edible arrangements scape. And when I say edible arrangements, I don't mean the chain.
Yes,
the,
exactly.
I'm talking about using carrots and asparagus and different things cascading out of this cornucopia, and just it just was spectacular. And
I
then I
know.
can think of another one that I loved. I think it was McLean, Virginia, a few years ago. The woman had a fairly new horse barn, like very nice. I'll just call it, a very showy horse barn. And there was a beautiful arrangement of carrots, like as perfect as you can get carrots to look. They were kind of fanned out, like
Oh,
in a
wow.
spray on the barn doors, and then there were some other arrangements similar to that with a horse and equine theme. So at least that was partially outdoors, so I could take pictures of those. So I was
Take
happy
a
with that.
picture of that.
Hmm.
And the good thing is, and I know I will give this information at the end, but our Instagram account, Historic Garden Week, will have photographs from that as well as the website once they've been uploaded to the website. So maybe you can go back and find
Hmm.
the image of the carrots that you're describing. It's great that they're still in your head,
Hmm.
but there should be plenty of photographs on the website.
Yep. And yeah, it's definitely for security reasons. So
Yes.
indoor photography is not allowed, but you can take photos of the gardens and of some signage. Like if people sometimes will have out the plan of the garden or a plant list might be on a
Right.
table outside. Sometimes the people who actually work on the gardens will be available to talk to. And so you can
Yes.
take notes from them. So one of the garden tours of Historic Garden Week that I attended this year was at Ballantrae.
Oh, yes, I was
Um,
there as well.
yeah, and the designer, Gordon, was actually walking around. He was very nondescript, just kind of wandering around. And I was like, wait a minute, I recognize this gentleman.
Oh,
So I got to pick his brains a little bit about, he was like, I remember 30 years ago when we planted this tree and that tree. And so
oh,
he was a great resource to have. So definitely ask around and see if the people who are behind the gardens, besides the homeowners and some of the volunteers, might know more as well.
And that is so smart to do because I think they're there for a reason. They love to share their plant joy with everyone. And so asking is never a problem. And I think they're happy to talk and they're happy to give you inspiration and exactly what was going on in their brains behind the design work. And that's where those outdoor photographs are wonderful. I've taken many, many photographs of different combinations that I never would have imagined. And what we talked a little bit about daffodils, and everyone attempts to do the succession of blooms, but it's really nice when you see someone else and its success, and then you just steal that idea. It's been one of my favorite things to steal ideas from my garden. And one of the things that I saw, I'd never seen a tree peony until maybe 12 years ago.
Mm.
And I now love my tree peonies. And they're later blooming, they're not during Historic Garden Week, but it's one of my favorite plants that I now have in my garden after simply seeing one, on Historic Garden Week. And the interesting thing about Historic Garden Week, as I said, there are tours across the state. But as you know, bloom time differs from Virginia Beach to Harrisonburg.
Mhm.
And so throughout the week, the nice thing is you'll see different plants blooming because the daffodils will have passed in Virginia Beach, but in Harrisonburg, they might be at mid bloom. So you really can get a taste of gardening across the Commonwealth during Historic Garden Week.
Mhm. And like you said, you discover new plants to add to your own garden. And I recall going to some tours and seeing things that I'm like, I didn't even know that those would grow well here. And if you know that they're successful in a garden tour, garden that you're looking at, chances are they'll work in your garden.
Exactly right. You're exactly right. And so, going back to your point, always ask or find someone
Hmm.
who may know the answer.
Hmm. And I was going to say a little bit more about garden tour etiquette. So usually they'll say no high heels if you're coming
Right.
into the house. If it's a rainy day, they might issue you some little those like kind of slip-ons that they use in surgery or that your painters might put on when they come into the house. Those little blue slippers that you slip over your shoes sometimes. Um, and I'm trying to think of some of the other rules that are particular to some of
Well,
the.
we cannot do the blue slippery things anymore.
Oh no.
Those are not only because of you're right, how slippery they are.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
they probably cause more problems than they help. So, a lot of times it's really up to the homeowners and the tour chairs. There is not one set rule for how to manage your tours. Of course, across the board, we have signs for watch your step, uneven footing, yeah, and of course, wear walking and comfortable shoes. Those are across the board. But for interior tours, if the homeowner wants mats put down, then the tour chairs would do that. If they don't, then they won't. Of course, umbrellas, those will be left outside, and yeah, hostesses will scurry umbrellas from the front door to the exit door if it's a terribly rainy tour day. I have to say, for my 2 years, Kathy, I have been so fortunate. Mother Nature has shined on this Historic Garden Week for the past 2 years, and it's been reflected in not having to deal with mats, not having to
Mhm.
worry about umbrellas, not having to worry about parking in muddy fields. I'll knock on wood so that I don't make a problem for the next
Yeah.
person. But it also is reflected in ticket sales. We put ticket sales on, we normally target for February 14th, Valentine's Day, to start ticket sales. This year it was a week later. But what we also have experienced is that with ticket sales, weather makes a difference.
Oh, yes.
And someone's looking for something to do on a Saturday or a Wednesday, and they'll buy the ticket the day before.
Mhm.
And so it's a little bit of both, but weather definitely, when Mother Nature is shining on us, it's really great for all of us, indeed.
Mhm. Yeah, I've been on lots of garden tours, including Historic Garden Week ones that have been not so nice weather. But sometimes overcast is the best for photos. So I don't mind that. I don't mind a little drizzle. It's when it's, torrential rain and windy and cold, that can be a little hard to do the tour. But I usually still, if I bought my ticket or have a ticket to it, I'll still go
Right.
just to support them. And it's almost always rain or shine, and they just can't reschedule all those homes and gardens for another day. It's
No.
very rare that there's a rain date for a garden tour that's held by a local organization. So, you
You're
know,
exactly right. And
mhm,
our tour this year in Charlottesville, it was, as you described, a little overcast, just a little misty.
mhm,
I cannot, and chilly, quite frankly. And then Monday turned out to be gorgeous. But it did not stop the visitors,
no.
thankfully. Everyone had on their layers, everyone had on appropriate footwear. And I really think more and more individuals and the visitors are understanding that you do not get dressed up for this garden tour. You dress appropriately so you really can explore outdoors and enjoy it and be prepared.
Mhm.
So I think that resonates also in our guidebook where it says over and over again, dress appropriately.
Mhm. And your guidebook, I would say, is a treasure.
Uh,
I A lot of people who are in the Mid-Atlantic area, if you haven't seen the Historic Garden Week guidebook, it's kind of like Reader's Digest size. They will have it at like the AAA offices and different libraries throughout Virginia to pick up. And I think different stores will have it out. So, even if you don't go on any of the tours, just reading the descriptions, you can come to that town and there's maybe a public garden listed or a park listed that you might want to visit that's listed and described in that book.
Oh, I love that you say that. It is this year's copy was 239 pages, and you're exactly right. It's chocked full of information, not only the beautiful homes that are open and the gardens that are open, but other interesting places of interest is what they call it in
Hmm.
the guidebook. It also has information about our restoration sites, the Garden Club of Virginia's restoration sites. I met a cute twosome that a pair of friends in Hillsborough, which was put on by the Garden Club of Fairfax. One of the individuals has been attending Historic Garden Week since 1979 when she was in high school. Her mother would make her skip school to go on the tours with her.
Yeah.
And she has every guidebook from 1979. Not only does she have them, she still has the sticky notes where she's read it cover to cover and marked the places that she still wants to visit. She since has moved to Denver and comes back to Virginia every year for Historic Garden Week. And I was just standing in a line, minding my own business. We started chatting, and there's so many stories out there, Kathy, where people come because they do it every year. It brings them joy. We have people from over 42 states that come to Historic Garden Week. And this past year, not 2024, but 2023, from 12 different countries.
Mm.
That's pretty remarkable,
Yeah, I think that it's great, and you get access to things that you normally wouldn't, of
right?
course, because a lot of them are private residences. And then, of course, there's usually an add-on, like I said, a local public garden might be part of it, or a park, or some type of art museum, or something that might be the refreshment stop on that tour.
Yes.
So you get access to that. And so let's talk a little bit about some bonus things on the tour. So sometimes there's plein air artists who are doing paintings in a garden.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's musicians set up.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's refreshments, like I just said. And then sometimes there's costumed characters. And so
Yeah.
at Ballantrae this year was a tall, striking gentleman. I took a few pictures of him in a Civil War era uniform, and he was quite in character when I talked to him.
Yes, he was guarding the front door, wasn't he? So
Hmm.
that we would not enter the front door. But he was lovely. Some will be dressed in period dress in Fredericksburg. It it they no longer do it, but it used to be that all their hostesses would dress in period dress
Hmm.
for the Fredericksburg tour. Last year in the Petersburg tour, there was a Flower Dew 100 is the name of the property that was open. And the governor's wife Temperance Flowerdew was her name. There was a historical actress in person greeting everyone as Temperance and welcoming all to her home and stayed in character the whole time. So there's always fun little pieces as you're describing with the garden tours. The tours make these decisions themselves, the tour chairs and the clubs. So period dress, as you said, refreshments. Bartlett Trees is at a lot of the properties giving away
Mhm.
saplings, and we can't thank Bartlett enough for being a sponsor for the Garden Club of Virginia Historic Garden Week, and also participating with their saplings that they give away. It's so cute. You'll just see people walking around holding the saplings. There are artists, there are musicians. Uh, at Ballantrae, I'm sure you saw there was a flower demonstration
Oh,
where she's
yeah. Yep.
showing the different
Mhm.
frogs that were used and the mechanics of flower arranging. There, I love the ones also that include a horticulture display where all the arrangements typically have what's been used in the arrangement on a table card. There will also be test tubes set up with the different flowers that are used throughout the home, with, of course, their botanical name and their common name. And people love to see those just as a single stem versus in an arrangement. And they really can take a photograph of that also. Like, I want to grow this, and this is the name of the cultivar. And
Mhm.
so there's an educational piece with it as well. People ask for paint colors. People ask for, what type of dog do you have? The dog at Ballantrae was adorable walking around. So, and they wanted to know what type of dog it was. So you really get it all. And
Mhm.
that's where I believe the hospitality comes from. There's no question, quite frankly, that most of the homeowners are not willing to answer or help you find the answer to. They really turn their homes into their visitors' homes for the day. And
Mhm.
that we could not do this without our fabulous homeowners who firstly say yes to being open for Historic Garden Week, but then their home is beautiful, of course, the way that it is when they're approached and invited to be on Historic Garden Week. But as we know, everyone is going to fluff up for Historic Garden Week. Maybe new pillows, add some plants, but it starts a couple of years out with procurement. That's the best timing, is to get the homeowners so that they can experience one cycle of Historic Garden Week, go on the tours themselves to see what to expect. But we could not do this without our homeowners opening their homes.
Mhm. Very generous of them.
Very
And, you
generous.
know, just like when you have company over, that's when you're going to do a new paint and get spruced up. So it definitely gives you the incentive to, say, renovate part of your garden or fix up something because, the crowds are coming. So it has its benefits for being a host as well. And I was going to mention in the April issue of Washington Gardener magazine, we have a list of the spring garden tours that are happening throughout our region. And late April through early June is high garden tour time. There's really not a weekend day that you can't find a local garden tour. So everything from the Shepherd Park and Brookland neighborhoods in DC, Capitol Hill neighborhood, out to Reston, have their Gardens of Note tour where symphony members are set up in the gardens, and that's always wonderful. And all the way out to Western Maryland,
Oh,
we
wow.
have some listed. So, and again, like you said, we can follow the season of spring throughout those weekends and explore and learn so much on these tours. But we also have to talk about, Fran, that the tours are fun for us to attend and fun to
Yes.
participate in, but they're usually for a reason. So they're usually because they're benefiting some organization or charity. So let's talk about what Historic Garden Week does with the proceeds from their tours.
Oh, great segue, Kathy. Thank you for that. If you don't mind, I would love to read, with your permission, just a quick few sentences about how the funds are used because I think
Hmm.
it's just worded so beautifully. And
Absolutely.
so I will begin reading. One of the most visible pillars of the Garden Club of Virginia's mission is to restore and ensure the integrity of historic public landscapes across the Commonwealth. These special sites provide a connection to our shared history and cultural heritage and to our relationship with the natural world. While there is great variation in the types of gardens and landscapes undertaken by the Garden Club of Virginia, some basic principles apply to all. The foremost being that each garden must be open to the public on a regular basis for all to enjoy. Funding is made possible by the proceeds of our annual Historic Garden Week tour, which draws visitors from across the world. And that's the end of the description. But isn't that wonderfully written? And the fact that it is that they must be open to the public just is so that's what the Garden Club of Virginia stands for. The
Mhm.
gardens are open to all, and we are saving and restoring history and making it available to all.
Mhm. I think it's very similar in mission and scope to the Garden Conservancy open garden days that happen in a lot of locations, especially on the East Coast and the Northeast. And they're collecting money and giving money to restoring older gardens. Some of those are private, though. So it's great to hear that the Historic Garden Week in Virginia is dedicating them to public accessible gardens.
Exactly right.
Hmm.
And the first Garden Week was in 1927 when the Garden Club of Virginia had a flower show that raised $7,000, which was used for conservation of trees at Monticello. And it's grown into today's statewide event. Its first restoration was Kenmore, which is George Washington's sister's home in Fredericksburg. And so it just was a bunch of smart individuals who got together, recognized the need for restoration, and went to work. And this past tour was its 91st Historic Garden Week tour.
Excellent. And I love to hear that history. And I guess you're going to have your 100th. It's going to be pretty big in a few years.
Yes,
Any big
yes.
plans looking forward to that or maybe upcoming for 2025?
Oh, you're nice to ask that. It's very interesting because you think, whew, Historic Garden Week 2024 is over, but yet, as you know, 2025 is already in the works. We don't have all the data yet from 2024, but we do know attendance was higher than last year, which is great. And so we're hoping that for 2025. So the 2025 tour, all the homes have not been procured yet. As I said, it's ideal to get them, over a year or 18 months in advance, but sometimes that doesn't happen and that's fine. But what we don't know, because each club or group of clubs creates their own tour, I don't have a lot of details about 2025 yet, other than it will be again across the state between 28 and 30 tours. The little bit that I do know for the cover of the guidebook, the beautiful guidebook, the cover this past year was in Suffolk and it's a beautiful hydrangea garden. And we have selected the cover for 2025. So that has been something that's been done. We will release that in a big splash meeting, which we call boot camp. And it's the tours for 2025 come to Richmond mid June, and we will reveal the cover or the cover property for the 2025 guidebook. And along with that, the flower is selected. And as you'll see, and those of your visitors or your listeners who have seen brochures or tickets, this past year, it was the hydrangea macrophylla Nico blue. And so the inspiration for that flower for the tour was taken from the cover property. So you will see those images also for 2025 mid June. But that's truly all I have for 2025. The great thing that we do know is it's such a structured event. The clubs really manage this beautifully. And what I do, as well as the staff members, Karen Ellsworth and Terry Lohman at the Garden Club of Virginia, we really are here for support for the tour chairs and to make the tour mechanism continue. The tour chairs procure their homes. As I said earlier, they'll do the flow of traffic, they'll decide on that, they'll decide on parking, where signs need to be placed. We of course advise them, but they make the final decisions. They also procure advertisements for in the guidebook, and that's lovely. We couldn't produce the beautiful guidebook that is so coveted without our advertisers in there. And so they do a lot of the work. What I do, along with Karen and Terry, is we set up a calendar of deadlines. When do we need your descriptions by? When do we need your photographs by? Um, and then Karen works heavily with the designer of the guidebook. So it's a lot about deadlines, Kathy,
Mhm.
and keeping and then when you get the phone call, should I have this home? Should I not have this home? There's no parking. Just talking through personal decisions with the tour chairs for their tour. And so that's what it's been great. I've gotten to know so many more members in the Garden Club of Virginia, and it's been a wonderful experience for me. But I keep saying hats off to everyone because of course it takes everyone to produce this, but the tour chairs are really, they know their homeowners, they know their area, they know their rangers and their club members. So thanks to them for together putting on these tours for the Garden Club of Virginia.
Mm. Yeah, it does take a whole team to put those on, especially so many tours all jammed into one week. And I only regret I only have one body. I can't clone myself. And so many are taking place at the same time
I
at different
know.
counties across Virginia on the same day. So it's tough to get to a lot of them, but I do try to get to at least one or two every year.
Oh,
Um, s-
Kathy, thank
mhm.
you for doing that. Last year I went to 2 a day and I was
Ugh,
exhausted by I
ugh,
just felt like I needed to. And
yeah.
the guidebook, as you know, has itineraries, but I was speeding through a lot of the gardens and I did not stop and smell the roses as I know you're supposed to do in life. So I'm so glad you were able to get to 2.
Hmm.
We did have a lot of individuals this year. We have a state pass, and that is a partnership that we have with Flower Magazine. And so, Flower Magazine, if you're a subscriber to Flower Magazine, you can get a Historic Garden Week state pass for $200. And if you do the math and you can look at the ticket prices, they
Hmm.
really can cover 3 or 4 tours. So we had a large increase in people buying state passes this year. And
Hmm.
that has made all the difference with people. It's been people want to go on the tours, but then they say, "Oh my goodness, I can't do 4 it's not about money, but I think it's just made it a lot more reasonable for people who want to do 4 or 5 tours to be able to do it.
Hmm.
And it's a great partnership with Flower Magazine, and we hope it will continue for a really long time.
Hmm. Yep, and if you have the time or just want to play hooky from work, if you're not retired, or
Exactly,
definitely take the whole week and hit as many as possible. So,
exactly right.
how can our listeners find out more and contact you?
Oh, okay. They can always contact me. My email is state chairman at vagardenweek.org. And then the website for Historic Garden Week is vagardenweek.org. And then the Garden Club of Virginia website is gcvirginia.org.
And you had mentioned the Instagram earlier, so we should probably give that
Oh,
too.
Historic Garden Week. Yes,
Yep.
Historic Garden Week is
Hmm.
the Instagram. You're right. Social media, social media is just amazing, isn't it? And I just get caught down that rabbit hole all the time. But amazing photographs, and you can see the beautiful photographs from Historic Garden Week, and then get ticketing information if you just follow the Historic Garden Week.
Great. Any final thoughts on local garden tours and organizing them, or why people should attend their local ones?
I Firstly, of course, to support your local tours. That is the most important thing. And if you look at the pricing, I've found that they're all very reasonable, and you are supporting local efforts at conservation, beautification. I also strongly recommend that you join plant societies,
Hmm.
like as we mentioned earlier, American Daffodil Society, and you're supporting those to continue the beauty that we have, going on tours, seeing how their dollars are being used in the community or in their state. And if it resonates with you, it's perfect, but it also brings you joy. We don't spend enough time outdoors. Kids don't spend enough time outdoors. Uh, as we went back to the beginning of this with my grandparents, I spent time outdoors with my grandparents in their gardens. And we just frankly need more of that. And I
Hmm.
think it makes everyone more joyful. It makes you appreciate it. I take my daughters, who are now all grown, and I quiz them. What's this? What's that? I've got a cute nephew who lives in Bethesda. And for his birthday one year, I gave him daffodil bulbs. Well, I'm really pretty certain that's not what he wanted for his birthday. And this past year, he sent me photographs of the blooms in his gardens from the daffodil bulbs that I sent him. And that just, it brought me joy. I'm assuming it brought him a little bit of joy, Kathy, but it definitely brought me joy that he took the time to do that. So you cannot argue with being outdoors and supporting your community and their efforts through the beauty of plants.
Well said. Thank you, Fran.
Thank you, Kathy. It's been a delight.
This episode is brought to you by Essentia. A better you starts with better hydration. Essentia is on a mission to inspire people to do what matters most. Their proprietary ionization process transforms water from any source into ionized alkaline water, providing water that's 99.9% pure with a pH of 9.5 or higher. Essentia overachieving H2O, the #1 ionized alkaline water. Shop now.
Creeping Jenny, plant profile. Creeping Jenny, Lysimachia numularia, is an evergreen perennial with small, rounded leaves on long, trailing stems that grow across the surface of the ground, taking root wherever a node touches the soil surface. This ground cover creates a true low-growing carpet that is ideal for the fronts of beds, along walkways, and in damp areas of your landscape. It is also known as moneywort and herb twopence. It is native to Europe, and it is hardy to USDA zones 4 to 9. In summer, upright, bright yellow flowers appear along its stems. The more sun it is in, the better the flowering, but it will even bloom sporadically in part shade. In hot climates, place it out of direct afternoon sun, as the foliage can become scorched by the intense rays. It prefers moist, well-draining locations, such as along a stream bed, ditch, or where a rain gutter spills out. It doesn't like to ever completely dry out. This plant loves wet so much that it can also be used in water gardens. It is very shallow-rooted, and it's easy to pull up a section to transplant it. Propagate it by rooting it in water and then planting the sections in damp soil. Planted in early spring so that it's well established by the heat of summer. Space each plant about 18 inches apart, and it will fill in quickly. Creeping Jenny is not troubled by deer or other pests. It's generally disease-free, but can get fungus or rust if sitting for long periods in hot, humid environments. Like moss, Creeping Jenny doesn't like to be smothered by leaves in the fall, so rake them off to allow the tendrils to get sunlight. It can tolerate light foot traffic and is extremely low maintenance. It needs no fertilizer or annual pruning. Simply cut out any dead or wandering stems as you notice them. Creeping Jenny, you can grow that. This profile was excerpted from the book Ground Cover Revolution by Kathy Jentz.
Get low-maintenance alternatives to lawns with Ground Cover Revolution by Kathy Jentz. Reducing the lawn is among the biggest trends in homeownership, with an endless stream of homeowners looking for an eco-friendly alternative to a traditional turfgrass lawn. In the last few years alone, over 23 million Americans converted part of their lawn to a natural landscape, and now they're looking to do even more. The biggest challenge to adopting this new ideal of the perfect lawn? Knowing how and when to replace your turf, and which plants are the best ones for the job. Ground Cover Revolution is here with all the answers you need, and some you didn't even know you needed. Included are 40 in-depth profiles of plants that are perfect choices for replacing a grass lawn. There are options for sun, for shade, for dry and wet sites, and for various climates around the globe. There are choices that bloom, options that are evergreen, and selections that are deer-resistant. Kathy Jentz has also included an incredibly useful chart that gives you all the specifics on each of the 40 choices for quick reference and to make your ground cover selection process even easier. Whether you want to replace the entire lawn or just reduce the amount of land dedicated to turf, Ground Cover Revolution will help you usher in a new and improved idea of what a beautiful lawn should be. Ground Cover Revolution is available now wherever you buy books, including Amazon.com and Bookshop.org.
What's new this week in the garden? Well, my irises and peonies are in bloom, joining my clematis and roses. It is a riot of spring out there over at the community garden plot. We've harvested salad greens and we're waiting on our radishes any day now. We shared some tips this week on our garden tip of the day on social media, and all of those included various ways of dealing with weeds, including eating them and using a weed torch, but carefully, of course, because we don't want to ignite our wood chip mulch or the side of your home. In local gardening events, some that you might want to attend include the Schwartz Peony Garden at Seneca Creek State Park in Montgomery County, Maryland. This is open and free most days. I believe there's a fee for the weekends, but it is a beautiful peony garden that you might want to attend if you're in the Washington, D.C. area, because peonies are almost at peak. And speaking of peonies, on May 16th at the Scott Arboretum in Swarthmore, Pennsylvania, outside of Philadelphia, is Peony Palooza. And they'll have a variety of peonies in bloom and encouraging the family to attend. You can find out more about that at scottarboretum.org. On May 25th is the summer kickoff celebration at the Hagley Museum in Wilmington, Delaware, and you can find out more about that at hagley.org. There'll be special programs, engaging tours, hands-on activities, something for everyone there. And then finally, that same day, May 25th, at the Morris Arboretum in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, is the opening day of Summer of Dinos. Go Mesozoic during the Summer of Dinos. Visitors can discover plants in the age of the dinosaurs with a self-guided tour of those feature plants. And you can find out more at morrisarboretum.org. Happy gardening!
In the book The Urban Garden by Kathy Jentz and Terry Spate, you'll find dozens of inspiring and creative ways to grow flowers, shrubs, vegetables, herbs, and other plants in small spaces and with a limited budget. Whether you want to grow on a balcony, rooftop, front stoop, or a tiny urban patio, turn your growing dreams into reality and build a gorgeous and unique garden that showcases your personal style while still being functional and productive. With the ingenious ideas and resourceful tactics found here, you'll be maximizing yields and beauty from every square inch of your space. No matter what you grow, the 101 amazing growing ideas found in the urban garden will turn your tiny urban yard into a treasure trove of green you'll be proud to share with family and friends. Buy your copy today at your local retail bookseller or order it online now at Amazon.com or bookshop.org.
Celebrating Spring with May Day by Christy Page at Green Prints. As a young child, I remember celebrating May Day in school. We would create May baskets woven out of construction paper and fill them with flowers and small treats. We would dance around a maypole and celebrate the warm weather of spring. I don't remember my children ever celebrating May Day in school, but we always did something small at home. May is my favorite month of the year, and I always thought it deserved to be heralded in by a celebration. While we didn't have a maypole, we would do silly dances, buy fresh flowers to decorate the house, and celebrate the start of truly warmer weather. To me, May is the true herald of spring. The days are longer, the sun is higher overhead, and the nights are not as chilly. It is a time in New England when we can truly begin to plan on planting our gardens and enjoying the sunshine. Flowers are in bloom everywhere, and the air has never smelled so sweet. I think there's some fun traditions here that could easily be observed. I particularly love the idea of children making May baskets and leaving them anonymously on doorsteps, spreading happiness and joy. There are several other fun traditions associated with May Day, such as washing your face with morning dew to bring good luck. That may be a little chilly, but I'm open to giving it a try. Gathering cuttings from flowering trees to decorate your home is one I'm definitely going to do. Walking barefoot in the morning dew or snow sounds a bit chilly, but maybe. Creating a May bush by decorating a bush or tree with brightly colored ribbons sounds like a lot of fun and a great way to add some color. Folklore states that turnips should be planted on May 1st to protect cucumbers from insects, and that it is most effective if they are planted while naked. I am all for planting a couple of turnips, but I will be clothed to save my neighbors from an embarrassing show. In Hawaii, May 1st is called Lei Day. People make and gift these garlands of flowers to promote the spirit of aloha, or good feelings, to each other. What a sweet and thoughtful way to let people know that you cherish them. It seems that May Day is a great time to be thankful for everything we have, enjoy the blossoming spring ahead, and share those warm thoughts with those around us. I hope you all have a wonderful month of May. This has been The Last Word by Christy Page with greenprints.com.
If you went on a road trip and you didn't stop for a Big Mac or drop a crispy fry between the car seats or use your McDonald's bag as a placemat, then that wasn't a road trip. It was just a really long drive. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
At participating McDonald's.
Thank you for listening to GardenDC. You can become a listener supporter for as little as 99 cents a month by going to anchor.fm/GardenDC/support. Another way to support this podcast is to subscribe to our monthly digital publication, Washington Gardener Magazine. To do so, go to WashingtonGardener.com. Thank you. Thank you for listening to GardenDC. You can become a listener supporter for as little as 99 cents a month by going to podcasters.spotify.com/pod/show/GardenDC. Another way to support this podcast is to subscribe to our monthly digital publication, Washington Gardener Magazine. To do so, go to washingtongardener.blogspot.com. Thank you. You can find and follow Washington Gardener on Twitter /X, Instagram, and Pinterest at WDC Gardener, and on Facebook at Washington Gardener Magazine. Please take a moment to rate and review this podcast on Spotify and Apple. Open the Spotify or Apple app, search for GardenDC, check on the rate button, and select 5 stars.